Welcome to Grandma Moses, A Life in Art. Thank you all for coming tonight. And thank you also for all the KOTV audience. So it's awkward to hold my phone, so we'll start with that. And I am now powering off my phone. I am a model of how to do things. Okay. So, this is a really amazing occasion in which we have three outstanding artists tonight on this stage, presenting a charming dramatization with slides, music, and Grandma Moses. Our narrator, and who also plays the art collector who discovered Grandma Moses, is William Martin Jean, who did an art exhibit here and spoke. And he is an award-winning artist. His artwork appears in museums and galleries widely. He is acclaimed for many kinds of art, but especially elegant systems-based art, Japanese-influenced art. He creates paintings that, this is his words, creates paintings that combine rational, intellectual experience with personal, intuitive feeling. As evidence of his many other talents, he is the co-author of tonight's presentation and founder of both City Artist at Work and the Artist Archives of the Western Reserve. Moreover, and you will soon experience this, Will is a longtime member of Actors' Equity. Our pianist, equally outstanding, is Cleveland-based musician David Gooding. As a composer, performer, arranger, lyricist, and music director with over 300 productions to his credit, he was music director and composer for the Cleveland Playhouse, organist for the Cleveland Orchestra under George Zell. He taught at Lake Erie College and served as music director for the Temple in Cleveland, and now is the organist choir master for the Fairmount Temple and director of music ministries at Messiah Lutheran Church. David won an Emmy Award for his work as music director of NBC TV's Hickory Hideout and composed two critically acclaimed operas for young people with lyricist Polly. He won the Cleveland Arts Prize in 1995 and now teaches voice and other music in Cleveland and New York City. Whew. But Polly Carroll
yeah, what can you say about her?
makes her Kendal acting debut tonight as Grandma Moses. And I am sure that you will be seeing more of her on stage as Kendal directors witness her fine presentation of this down-to-earth artist, very much like Polly. Polly's art uses striking color and composition, wit and invention. All of these animate her artworks ranging from dolls to art clothing, quilts, collages, and more, all treasured by Kendalites and beyond. Here's a little teeny bit from Polly's bio for Kendal. Before our children were born, I taught elementary school. After graduate work, I taught at the Brookhaven Lab preschool for many years with the bonus of reaching children from all over the world. At various times, I have worked with inner city and homeless children. There's so many dimensions to people here, and especially Polly. So thank you. Play will begin. This is the story and life of one of the most beloved American artists, Grandma Moses, who began painting at the age of 77 and created over 1,600 works during her lifetime. As a little girl, she mourned the death of President Lincoln and lived on to see the presidency of John F. Kennedy. Here is the story of a simple farm wife who, through her humility and imagination, rose to great prominence and brought to the world, through her art, a return to an age of innocence.
It was almost noon when Louis Del Calder drove his 1935 Ford down the narrow winding road into Hoosick Falls, while Summit and Eagle Ridge and Little White Creek were behind him. All morning he had driven past farms and churches and mills, and now he found himself in the lovely valley of the Hoosick River, Green Mountains of Vermont to the east, Hudson River to the west. It was spring. The year was 1938. I was an engineer for the New York Water Department. Well, I traveled a lot on the job. Sometimes I found time for my other interest. I was an amateur art collector. It was about lunchtime when I arrived in Hoosick Falls. A red and white sign on the corner caught my eye. W.D. Thomas Drugstore. Well, looked like about the only place in town to get a sandwich. So I pulled over my Ford over to the curb and I got out and I peered into the drugstore window. Jars of strawberry preserves, assorted, crochet doilies. This sure wasn't the big city, but along the back, 4 little paintings, they caught my eye.
I've always had pictures in my mind, lots of pictures. Memory pictures, I call them. I've always thought I would like to paint some of those memories. But then, I didn't know anything about painting. Girls like me, growing up on the farm, we learned to knit and crochet and hook rugs and piece quilts. I know how to do all those things. So now I'm 77 years old. I'm taking those skills and making pictures, worsted pictures.
Well, these pictures were done with yarn and many different fanciful, colorful stitches. There was something about them that fascinated me. I think it was their gentleness and their honesty.
Worsted pictures, that's what we call them. Worsteds are pictures that I sew, not with silk thread like samplers, but pictures made with wool. That's because, you see, there's always a lot of wool on a farm. And then my sister Celestia came down the other day and saw my pictures. And she said to me, I think you should paint pictures. Probably that would be better and faster than making these worsted ones. I thought about that a while. Not very long, though. She's probably right, I sure don't want my work to be eaten by the moths. I think I'll try to paint.
A lovely view from the window. Louis Calder studied the pictures. Here was an artist who seemed to see each painting as viewed from a window. A painting of Hoosick Valley, its lace curtains blowing in the breeze, a sense of tranquility in the farms that still existed, and for many people who had fond memories of them.
Let's see, how to go about painting. First thing I have to do is find a frame, and then I'll saw myself a piece of wood to fit in the frame. First things first, that's how we do things on the farm. I always thought it would be a good idea to build the sty before getting the pig. Seems reasonable, don't you think? And I still say young men should get the house for her having the wedding.
So Louis Calder ate his ham sandwich that day in W.D. Thomas's drugstore. All the while, the small paintings in the store window, well, it stuck in his mind. About those pictures in your window, he asked the clerk. Did you have any more like that? Well, maybe a dozen or so more in the back room, said the clerk. Not a single sale, though. He continued, wiping off the counter. He stopped. Wait, he thought. This might be a real customer. I'll give you 50% or 10% off if you take the whole bunch. Well, Lewis Calder made up his mind. He bought all the small paintings and then asked the clerk if he knew where this unknown artist lived.
I had always wanted to paint. I just didn't have time until now. Let's see. I'll go over my board with linseed oil and then probably put on, maybe 3 coats of white paint. That'll take time, but I won't be using so much colored paint that way. Colored paint costs a lot, and I've decided to use it accordingly. That's a good Scotch idea.
Williamstown, 1946. Later that afternoon, Lewis Calder found his way back to Eagle Ridge. He stopped a couple of times along the way to ask directions. It seemed that everybody knew where the old lady lived who painted all those pictures. Well, he wound up his way up the 3rd or 4th hill to the right farm, and then, wouldn't you know it, the artist wasn't home. Her daughter-in-law answered the door. Did she have any more paintings, he asked. Well, I think there might be 10 more, she said. Maybe you can come back in the morning?
What's going on here? Dorothy's on the porch waving at me. Anna Mary, there was a man here this afternoon looking for your pictures. Wanted to know, did you have any more? I told him you maybe had 10 or more. Oh, Dorothy, I don't think I have that many. Well, let's see. I'll dig out some of these old pictures and start counting them. 1, 2, 3. 2 more here. A couple in the summer kitchen. 8, 9. I count 9. Oh, but look. Here's the one I painted of the farm in Virginia. It's a nice big picture. So if I saw it in 2 and find another old frame, that'll be fine. I'll have the 10 she promised. I don't want to get Dorothy in the doghouse.
Well, Calder thought he had a great find. He packed all the paintings in his car, the ones from Thomas's drugstore, and the 10 he got the next morning from the farm. He headed back to New York with an idea, a resolve. He was going to introduce this new artist to the urban art world.
Maybe you'd like to see one of my worsteds. I think this is the one I took down to Mr. Thompson's drugstore. Well, I'm not sure about that.
Let me tell you, what she is sure about is astonishing, and what she remembers is remarkable. This woman, who was to become known as Grandma Moses, began painting these pictures when she was 77 years old. In her lifetime, she completed over 1,600 paintings. You heard me right, over 1,600 paintings. She would be honored by President Harry Truman, President John Kennedy, and in fact, she would be commissioned by the presidential cabinet to paint a picture of President Eisenhower's farm in Gettysburg. Not only that, she would correspond with Winston Churchill. Black horses. It was the heart of the Depression when Lewis Calder managed to track down Anna Mary Moses on the farm where she had been raising children and grandchildren. He believed he saw an artistic talent. He would invest in paints and brushes and send them off to Hoosick Valley to this artist, this woman who had been born in Washington County, New York, a land of green meadows and wild woods, on the farm in the year 1860, September 7th.
I wasn't always an old woman, you know. I didn't always wear these spectacles. I didn't always put a few drops of turpentine into my milk at bedtime to ease the arthritic pain. Before I was Grandma Moses, I was Anna Mary Moses. And before that, I was Anna Mary Robertson. I was a child once. We were 5 boys and 5 girls at home. Lester was the oldest, then Horace, then me, then Arthur. Probably Mom lost some babies then, because there's a vacancy after Arthur. Then Celestia, Miana, Ona, and Joe. And another lull. Then Saul and Fred. We came in bunches, like radishes. I've always had a good memory and a good imagination. And believe me, those are 2 things you can't really separate. So today, when I paint, I think of something that's not in front of my eyes. Something that has meaning for me. Something important to me. I close my eyes and I imagine the whole scene. I'm not quite 5 years old. My mother and my Aunt Lib are taking me on a buggy ride through the valley and down to my grandma's house just above Eagle Ridge. We're outside of Cambridge now, and I see that all the houses have black crepe on them. And in the town, all the pillars are wrapped in black material. Mama, what's going on? The shopkeeper comes over to the buggy. President Lincoln was shot last night. I don't know what to think. Mama is very still for a minute. And then she says softly, "What will become of us now?"
These words were still in her mind years later when she painted this picture. She drew the road running gaily down the hill to Cambridge. And then, near the village, she painted smears of black on the fences and strips of black bunting around the flagpoles and the hitching post. She let the flags just hang limp on the pole. It, too, mourns the dead president.
I'm painting the buggy, sitting very still in the middle of the road, just like it was that day when Mama was talking to the storekeeper. And Mama's dress will be lavender.
Lavender was for ladies. As a grown woman, Grandma Moses surely knew about Walt Whitman's lament for the dead Lincoln. Lilacs in the doorway of an old farmhouse stand for the pain of loss. Grandma painted this painting in 1957, exactly 92 years after she took that very sad buggy ride. The Old Oaken Bucket illustrates a popular song Grandma had learned in her youth. This painting was completed in 1943, just 4 years after her so-called discovery, where she won the New York State Prize that year at the fair. In harvest time, what we see is, when we look at these paintings, we see the warm color of the harvest season, the yellows and the golds. We see 2-story farmhouses and the thrashers of the field. Imagination comes alive. We see how the world looks through another person's experience. And that's the key to the appeal of Grandma Moses. In 1938, Lewis Calder saw that appeal. He knew it was something special. He bought more pictures. He paid for them and took them back to New York to show to gallery owners. It seems that Calder had a discerning eye for an artistic talent. For several months, he tried diligently to market the paintings. It wasn't easy, but finally, in the fall of 1939, 3 Grandma Moses paintings surprisingly appeared in an exhibition at the Museum of Art and Modern Art in New York City.
My goodness, I don't know what to think. Mr. Calder is back again, and he's telling me things I can hardly believe. 3 of my paintings are in a museum in New York. This is such a surprise for me.
Not long after that, I contacted Otto Keller, owner of the Gallery Saint Etienne in New York. He was taken with the works of this new artist, and so he arranged a one-woman show of her work, and he called it What a Farm Wife Painted. Then Gimbel's department store decided to have a show of her paintings in the store. It was around Thanksgiving time. And this particular painting shows all the joys of winter spent in the country, skating on the old pond, sleigh riding for the children's snowball fights, cross-country skiing, and hunting wild turkeys. Smoke rises from the chimney and chill permeates the air.
I love winter, and I've always loved Thanksgiving. It's my special holiday. But I do have sympathy for the poor barnyard king. He has but one life to give for his country.
This wonderful painting is one of the larger paintings Grandma painted at the suggestion of a friend who sent her a large canvas about 3 by 4 feet.
My bedroom was so small, I had to lay the canvas on my bed in order to paint. I want you to know this is a strenuous procedure for someone my age. And now you won't probably believe this. They want me to come down to the big city, New York. I've never traveled very much. I don't quite know what to do. But I think the best thing for me will be to take along some of my preserves and my bread and my homemade cakes. They can put them on the table near the paintings. I think that's what people will be interested in. My preserves, because they're really very good.
So Grandma Moses went to New York with her preserves. The New York Herald Tribune wrote, "Well, she's the white-haired girl of the USA who turned from her strawberry patch to painting the American scene at the wonderful age of 80. Come, you'll see her. You'll see the first complete exhibition of her wool pictures and her American primitive paintings. Come hear what she gave the urge to buy paints and try her brushes on old threshing cloth. It's on Gimbel's 11th floor." At Gimbel's, they wanted her to speak. There was a microphone, and that took her by surprise.
I don't know what to make of all this. It looks like hundreds of people have come to see this old farm woman. It looks sort of like I'm famous. And they want to shake my hand. I don't even know these people. And now they're trying to get me to rush here and rush there and rush everywhere. Here I am right in Manhattan. Anticipation, vexation, commotion, confusion. There must be 400 people looking right at me. And I don't know what they're up to. The one whole day seems like a big blur. Do I want to see the Empire State Building? Land sakes, in this rain you couldn't see anything. And then, what if the rain stops? Well, yes, I'd sort of like to go there. And now they're asking me things like, how do I like all the uproar? And people are telling me they're proud to be seen with me. And I just say, well, why weren't you proud to be seen with me before? I'm just the same person. They don't know what to say. But if people want to make a fuss over me, I guess I'll just let them.
The Gimbel's exhibit was at Thanksgiving time, 1940. It was a year when American people seemed to be reeling from the effects of the prolonged Depression. Anna Mary Moses worked embodied everything that seemed good in America. She painted scenes of farms and small towns, things that existed or were still in the near past for many people. On this slide of Wash Day, many of her paintings chronicle daily life. In this painting of Wash Day, everyone has a job. Scrubbing on the washboard, picking apples off the ground, clothes hanging over the fence, clothes drying flat on the ground. In Church Picnic, this work from 1945 is a delight and a joy for all ages. The children play ball and swing while neighbors gather to chat and set up the picnic tables. Like most of her paintings, the landscape is just a setting for human activity. In the family picnic, whether daily chores or Sunday church picnics, people make these charming paintings come alive. There is always joy in all of her works.
And then, before I knew it, I was receiving a lot of letters from people who like certain paintings. I really didn't plan on taking orders for my pictures, but I didn't want to disappoint folks.
Even though she did sometimes do pictures over, she never copied the painting exactly. In May Morning, the artist was the real thing. She had lived the virtue of honesty and generosity and good-heartedness. Her work proclaimed the importance of family, church, community, and the country where those things seemed under attack. She reached people, and to the public in those years, the abstract art of the time was incomprehensible. The vast majority of Americans just didn't get it. On the other hand, Anna Mary Moses was absolutely what she was, a simple country housewife who painted pictures folks understood. As a girl, Grandma had left home at the age of 12 to earn a living as a hired girl. And for her, that new experience was a grand education, cooking, housekeeping, moralizing, mingling with the outside world. Church was a focus for community life. So church steeples dominated many of her paintings, simple country churches for a simpler time.
So I'm living with Presbyterians now. These folks are the Whitesides, and they're real churchgoers. Every Sunday I hitch up old Black Joe and drive them off to church in their buggy. And when we get there, I put the flowers on the pulpit. And then I have to remember what the text is for that day. Mrs. Whiteside tells me that if I read the Bible all the way through, she'll give me a silver thimble, a real silver thimble. So I read every day now. There are a lot of words in that book I don't know, so I just skip over them and keep reading right on. I'm almost finished. It's long, but I think I'll get that silver thimble because I did read all those pages. And when I get it, I will wear it every day until I wear holes in it all the way through.
In White Christmas, the Whiteside Church was important to Anna Mary. It was part of her life. Church was a part of all community life. So in her later years, this is what she painted. Nothing of what she saw from day to day. Everything came from her deep-seated memory.
I left the Whitesides last spring, and now I'm the hired girl for old Mrs. Birch. And old Mrs. Birch, I guess because she's so old, has lots of stories to tell. Yesterday she told me that her well was the original well that inspired that song, The Old Oaken Bucket. Imagine that! And then she sang a little bit of it for me. I have to tell you, though, she wasn't a very good singer. And then she kept right on telling me this story. My great-grandfather, she said, lived on this place. And he fell in love with one of the neighbor's daughters. And that was a problem. Her parents didn't like the idea because the young man and his people were poor folks. Oh, Mrs. Birch looked sad telling the story. Well, she said that made a lot of trouble. So the young folks would write letters to each other and slip out at night to hide them in an apple tree. I thought it was a lovely story. Mrs.
The old oaken bucket in winter.
Mrs. Birch rambled on. Paul went off for 3 years as a sailor. In those days, you had to sign up for 3 years. He got so homesick that on board the ship he wrote verses. He called them The Old Oaken Bucket. I waited for Mrs. Birch to finish up the story. Her stories sometimes go on very long. Well, when the 3 years were up, he came back and he gave those verses to a Mr. Woodworth. And that man said they were his, which they were not. Mrs. Birch sounded angry at the end of the story. And when it was over, I went out to look at the well again. I think I'll remember that well and that story for a long time.
Anna Mary Moses was called Mother Moses for a while, but it soon became Grandma Moses because of her age of 77. Well, I told you that. And because of her age, art gallery support was really stymied for a while. Clearly, she wasn't likely to live long enough to warrant the investment of time and money. But Hoosick falls in the winter, but Grandma Moses, she continued to paint. She painted stories, lifetime stories. Think about that for a minute. All of us spend life creating our own life stories and telling them to others and to ourselves in a way of keeping that story and us alive. Memory makes us all too human. In this country wedding,
today I look at the calendar on the wall and it says the year 1887. This is a momentous day in my life. Today I will marry Thomas Moses. I'm a new bride. I'm 26 years old. That's really old for an unmarried woman. So on this day, I'm leaving my homestead here in the valley.
the departure.
Thomas and I are boarding a train and heading south into the old Confederacy. Still, I know that wherever I go, I will always want to remember this beautiful, snowy valley.
For the next 20 years, Grandma and her new family worked a succession of rented farms in the Shenandoah Valley. In this painting of the thunderstorm, when you lived on a farm, harsh weather made you very much aware of Mother Nature. In the painting, this towering clouds form and the wind whips up, unsettling the town folks who scurry about chasing their hats and calming the horses and getting the laundry down. The dog, legs firmly planted, barks to give warning. In this painting of taking of the laundry, Grandma didn't use fancy art terms. She instinctively knew how to keep the viewer's eye in the picture by repeating colors to make the eye travel throughout the paintings. You can see how the red-orange is used in this painting of taking of the laundry. And then in the next painting, which is apple butter making, well, there you are.
Well, down in Virginia, I'm beginning to acquire a reputation as a champion butter maker. And I hope to win first prize for my canned tomatoes at the country fair. I plant those tomatoes, I hoe them, I pick them, I boil them, and I put them in jars. There isn't much on this farm that I can't do. And when nighttime comes, I make sunbonnets and night clothes for the children. And there were plenty of them. I've had 10 babies since I've been here. 5 lived and 5 died. On a farm, nothing changes but the seasons. Monday is wash day. Tuesday is ironing and mending. Wednesday is baking and cleaning. Thursday is sewing. Friday, odd jobs or work in the garden. Today, I'm remembering a verse from our old school book back home long ago. Oh, Monday was our washing day, and while the clothes were drying, a wind came whistling down the line and sent them all a-flying. I saw the skirts and petticoats go flying off like witches. I wept, so bitterly I wept, I lost my Sunday breeches. I saw them flying through the air, alas, too late to save them. A hole was in their ample part, as though an imp had worn them.
In this painting of the auction, the Moses moved a great many times while in Virginia, but then finally, in 1905, they went back to Eagle Bridge, New York. Each move was a great upheaval. Sometimes it was preceded by an auction. Everything a family could not or would not take along was auctioned off. And then after that came moving day. All the hustle and bustle of packing up the household goods, everything from the spinning wheel to the baby's cradle, from chickens and hens to pumpkins, all vividly pictured here. There's joy as they look ahead and also sadness, saying goodbye to dear friends and neighbors.
We're on our way back home, Hoosick Valley. Hoosick Valley Meat chartered a railroad car so we can bring along a lot of produce, apples and meat, everything we need. And of course, since we're putting the livestock in the rail car, we need a man to take care of it, and that will be Thomas. And then we'll smuggle in a couple of the boys, Forrest and Lloyd. I'm tying up the cow in the corner with the feed, so we'll surely need a fork for the manure. In the other corner, I'm putting the chicken coop, along with apples, and that'll make the whole car smell sweet. And Forrest and Lloyd will look after the little black and tan dog. So now, that's our family.
And not Ebo was what they call this new home back in New York. It hugged the quiet valley that surrounded the stage where Moses' family played out their life. Eagle Bridge, this was where they ended up and where Grandma Moses lived for the rest of her life.
I'm so glad to be back in the Hoosick Valley. It's late summer now, and time for apple butter making. You see, apple butter is a necessity. I'm going to tell you how to make it, because it takes a lot of time. First, you take 2 barrels of sweet cider. Well, you grind the apples and make the cider first. And then you put it all in a big brass kettle out in the orchard, and you start it to boiling. And then you want 3 barrels of quartered apples. Snits is what we call them, apples with the cores cut out. And you commence to feed them into the kettle and keep the stirring going. Well, us women folks do that. We keep on feeding in the apples and stirring till evening. And then the young folks come in and take over the stirring. It takes 2, a girl and a boy, to take hold of the handle. I'm sure you've guessed by now, it's a regular frolic all night out in the orchard.
In baking bread, the smell of of the bread in the oven. Spreading with homemade jam was the comfort of home. In this painting, children have carefree play with kittens, while the kittens warm themselves by the warm, toasty fire. All in Grandma's paintings, there's a general spirit that defines these storytelling works. They're about people, a community where each person has a job. Whether peeling apples or chopping wood, each person becomes part of the event that tells a well-remembered and well-loved story. In this painting of barn roofing, there's no hint that the men's labors was tiresome. They're willing to help one another and take pride in their handiwork. In those days, husbands and wives were partners. A farmer could not succeed unless the wife could process and preserve what he grew. Neighbors knew whose butter was the sweetest and who had the freshest eggs, and who offered the best advice on preserving that perennial necessity, apple butter.
Thomas knows how to plant a furrow, and I know how to put up apple butter.
Some of the most engaging Grandma Moses paintings are the how-tos to farm life: how to make candles, how to make soap, how to cut a Christmas tree. In this candle making,
Grandma
in this
Moses,
painting,
candle making is women's work. We do it in winter because the hardening is faster. It's a tiresome job, but necessary, but short on fun. We take the lard from the beef, the hard tallow, we dry it, and we save it up. And when cold weather comes, we start the candles for the following year. We thread the wicking into the candle mold, melt some of the tallow, and pour it into the mold so that it runs down. And then we set it outside to harden. And if we're really lucky, we'll be able to fill the molds twice each day, morning and evening. When they're cold, we cut off the wick, pull out the candles, pack them in a box, and put them away for next year.
Grandma Moses was at her best as a painter of broad vistas, landscapes, and action figures. The candle dipping day, though charming, does lack some of the authority she had without other works. In making soap and washing sheep is another painting about the division of labor on the farm. Some people think of folk art as being flat, but Grandma's paintings are certainly not flat. In this painting, she creates deep space by making things appear smaller in the background with less detail and softer colors. There's a sense of air and atmosphere. And as you can see, the paintings are self-contained. There's nothing beyond the present place that can upset the day. We are visiting a better time through Grandma's time machine.
Well, you see, now it's 1840. I'm working on my memory pictures. Seems like suddenly I'm 80 years old. Now let's be sensible. I know perfectly well that nobody makes their own candles or soap anymore. We have electric lights, and we buy ivory soap at the A&P. But I still believe that the old way should be remembered, and that's what I paint. I sometimes wonder how vast is memory. I have more memories than if I were 1,000 years old. 1,000 memories are like 1,000 friends still with me.
In Witches, a moonlight sky casts an eerie light over the Halloween proceedings. Look at the black cat and the delightful screeching owl. The next one was Halloween. Children are almost always part of the composition, and she always celebrated children. One of these is Halloween, where the spooky ghost chases screaming children and other dunks for apples or trick or treat. Happy jack-o'-lanterns smile at us from the painting. In Sleigh Ride, these paintings depict the joys of winter again. Sleigh rides, sledding, all seen in a winter landscape that bustles with energy and fun for those carefree days. Grandma's paintings remind us of a time when sharing brought folks together.
What would winter be without a good fierce snow fight or a great sleigh ride going along the icy road?
Husek Falls in the winter, we return to this masterwork. The painting could be a miniature village under a Christmas tree, complete with a train traveling over a bridge and a village dotted with houses, barns, and churches. When you realize the small size of the painting, 22 by 24 inches, you wonder how she managed to put so much of herself in these pieces. The painting depicts a cozy village nestled quietly in the valley as a storm brews overhead. Then you might wonder, where did Grandma get this love for painting? Well, her father, they say, was more than just a Sunday painter. He probably sparked an art interest in her that came alive when she became an old lady. The story of Anna Mary Robertson Moses spins like an authentic American folk tale. Like most people in her circumstances, Grandma Moses traveled very little. What she knew best and loved the most was the narrow valley of the Hoosic River.
Near our farm is an old turnpike inn. My teacher said it was used by the British as a hospital in 1777 during the Battle of Bennington. Some old folks in our town tell stories about how that old inn used to be a stopping place for stagecoaches. Changed horses every 2 miles, they say. Now somebody has the idea to paint that inn in a red and white checkerboard pattern. I like that idea. It will be a landmark through the whole valley. You won't be able to miss it, winter or summer.
She painted the old checkered house in winter also. Grandma was a free New England thinker. How else could she have been so enthusiastic about painting the 18th century inn in red and white checkerboard pattern? Each of the paintings is a series, is a marked contrast to the others. Each one is from a different angle. She never repeated herself. She would have been too bored. The 1955 painting depicts the inn during Revolutionary times with uniformed soldiers standing around. The 1950 painting is filled with exuberant, fun-loving children and sleigh ride merrymakers. Now we go to a painting of an auto. Of all the things most difficult for us to grasp is how long this woman lived. 1860, 1961. Imagine the changes she observed. When she was a child, the train and the steamboat were the modes of transportation. Horse and buggy appear often in her paintings. Then, of course, in time, the automobile.
Autos and horses. The road just isn't big enough for both of them. That's how I see it on this road.
In the first auto, there's no traffic jams in her paintings, just a single auto chugging along at 5 miles an hour. In these works, the horse and buggy share the road. The earlier autos are painted like boxes with wheels, but later she probably used resource material like one she found in magazines.
You know, it occurred to me, if I lived long enough, I would be able to see people flying around in the sky. Well, today is the day. I'm 47 years old. Oh, what excitement it is to see that balloon in the air. Folks all around are cheering and waving as we watch that balloon sail out over the distant hills.
Well, there is excitement in this balloon painting. Children scurry out the schoolhouse to catch a glimpse of the hot air balloon. And, of course, the teacher tries to curb the enthusiasm while the farmer stops his plow. Neighbors and young and old, are amazed at this wondrous sight. Grandma lived for many years after she saw that first balloon flying overhead. she was still on the farm in Hoosick Falls the day in 1957 when the first satellite went into space. This painting, it snows, it snows. I think Grandma loved winter. She painted so many winter pictures. She must have loved watching the snow drift down so quietly, blanketing the earth with a mantle of white. You can hardly distinguish the church in the middle ground, creating a strong contrast with the antics of trying to catch the turkey in the foreground. In Christmas trees.
On the farm, we celebrate the holidays in a big way. I love to watch everybody hauling in the Christmas tree from the woods and see the men sawing the Yule log. And lots of holiday visitors come by, and all generations of family, from the oldest to the very youngest. They're all here. It's a glorious and joyful scene, with all of us gathered in the living room.
In this painting of a tramp on Christmas Day, wanderers are not uncommon in the country, especially on the farm. Many of you remember, not feared as they can be today. In Grandma's day, it's likely that this man, this wanderer, would find a warm meal and a place to sleep.
Sometimes even strangers show up, and they're always welcomed. That's how we do things on the farm. And on the farm, very few social events are more important to country women like me than the quilting bee. This is where we visit and exchange gossip, and most important, we create something of beauty. We do it together. Here, note how the quilting table and the dinner table are tilted so that we can see what's on the table. Women took great pride in their needlework, and every well-regulated house had a quilting room. Common patterns were sunflower and rising sun and friendship.
Back to the country fair.
Country fairs are important in farm life. A chance to display what we grow, the livestock we raise, all the things we make on the farm, and a chance to relax with family and friends. I paint lots of pictures of the versions of the fairs I remember.
You know, in this painting of country fairs of 1950, it's one of the work of the greatest number of figures and one of the deepest vistas. How many of us would be able to paint a scene from our childhood? This actually is the genius of Grandma Moses. And looking at this painting of the barn dance, Grandma was essentially a landscape painter, but even in her interiors, she always attempted to bring the outside in. Here, the doors of the drive-through barn are flung open to reveal a continuing landscape. The painting is almost a painting within a painting, with the doors serving like a frame for the musicians, dancers, and the hangers-on. And young folks are not forgotten. The barn dance is a delightful scene of fiddling, dancing, and drinking into the wee hours of the morning. Some dancers are striking poses, and one couple engages in a spirited jig. In the painting, we are resting. For much of Grandma's life, farming had been thought of as a noble profession. But today, if we look back, we know that toward the end of the Great Depression, farmers were being driven from the land by dust storms and bank foreclosures. And in here, the next painting, the times were changing. Thousands of people left their farms and headed into wartime factories. Many of you remember this. Perhaps at that time, the country needed a clear reminder of better times, clearer pictures of better times. In the painting, coming back to pumpkins, the exhibition of Grandma Moses' work in New York City around Thanksgiving time in 1940 was to become a milestone in sugaring People heard about this 80-year-old woman and saw her pictures in New York, and the newspapers declared, "This is more than a great artist. She is a great American housewife, the sort of housewife who has kept the tradition of Thanksgiving alive."
Well, you see, Thanksgiving is always a special day for me. I was born just 3 years before President Lincoln issued the first Thanksgiving proclamation.
Yeah, one journalist wrote, "As long as American wives busy themselves with cranberries and chrysanthemums, there'll always be a Thanksgiving." And so, right here, with the stroke of a copywriter's pen, Grandma Moses became a great American artist. Art critics began to recognize primitive painting, a term to coin describe self-taught artists. One headline exclaimed, "Grandma Moses just paints and makes no fuss about it." Audience loved it and still do. Talk to your friends. She became a marketing phenomenon. Greeting cards by the millions, best-selling books, radio interviews, an Academy Award-nominated documentary. Grandma Moses was found in more American homes than almost any other artist.
Land's sakes, I just paint. If I didn't paint, I would have raised chickens. I still do. I won't sit back in my rocking chair waiting for someone to help me. And another thing, I surely have never understood the high prices folks are willing to pay for my paintings. Except maybe this could be the reason. I wonder sometimes if we're progressing. In my childhood, life was different, slower. I think people enjoyed it more.
You know, Grandma's images of America's rural past were transferred to curtains, dresses, cookie jars, and dinnerware. She drew attractions at parades and political rallies. At the time of her death in 1961, it was estimated that Americans had exchanged over 100 million Christmas cards bearing representations of her paintings. Grandma Moses' story looks back at the humble beginnings from which she came, that strikes a deep chord in American imagination. Prominence from humble beginnings, Abraham Lincoln, Thomas Edison, even Elvis Presley. We seem to place a higher value on things that come from nothing than on things that come from something.
I have always taken pride in my own thrift, and I have a bit of ingenuity. Painting on old leftover things in my own leftover time. I remember my first painting, pulling together that leftover fragment of Thrasher canvas and leftover house paint and an almost forgotten frame.
In this painting of the rainbow, dated 1961, is her last completed painting. Note that it takes on an almost impressionistic look. It seems appropriate that this last painting would focus on the sign of hope, a rainbow. From the first time she picked up the brush at the age of 77, Grandma Moses continued to paint for the next 24 years. She was 101 years old when she died in 1961. She had completed 1,600 paintings and probably more.
I have written my life in small sketches. A little today, a little yesterday, as I thought of it. I have remembered things from my childhood on through the years, good things and some unpleasant ones. I look back on my life like a good day's work. It was done, and I'm satisfied with it. I knew nothing better, and I made the best of what life offered to me. Life is what we make it. always has been, always will be. Well, in 1940, at that first Thanksgiving Day festival at Gimbel's department store, I was there in New York, and they wanted me to give a little speech. So I got up and I told everybody about my jams and my jellies and my preserved fruit. And then apparently all those New York City art critics were there. That was a big surprise. And they seemed to like the event. And they wrote about me. And they wrote about my paintings. And it seemed like almost overnight, I guess you might call me a sort of a celebrity. Folks seemed to like what they saw, and I became sort of a star in the art world. A man named Edward R. Murrow made a TV show about my work, and the actress Lillian Gish played Grandma in a new thing called a TV docudrama. I guess my paintings captured the imagination of folks, because in 1961, a lot of people celebrated my 100th birthday. They even called the event Grandma Moses Day. So you see, we can take heart in that old saying, it's never too late. Oops.
Very nice. Thank you.
So I asked Polly and Will and David if people had questions or want to make comments if they'd stay, and they said yes. So any comments or questions? Bruce has a mic. And then I'll give a mic.
Claudine, here's a mic.
Was this authentic? Did you actually find out these things from her life, about her life?
Will.
Could you repeat that a little bit?
She wants to know if they were authentic.
Were these authentic facts about her life?
Yeah, did you really find out these things? I mean, is this really based on fact?
Well, I mean, there are several. Oh, okay, yeah, okay. This to come off.
Here, use this one. Use this one.
Oh, thank you. You know, actually, when we started, we had several books that we used to look at how her life was. And one of the interesting facts about why she started painting, at 77 she had developed, we all are aware of this, arthritis. And with the arthritis, she had to basically, the hands were used differently. So basically, when she started, she was doing these wool paintings, which are really very difficult to do. And you constantly, they have to be small, and you also have to add so many colors that change so rapidly. And so she found out, like so many people, she was using the things that were in the barn. She was using this old burlap, and eventually, using that with her yarn pictures. But eventually, it went to the painting, which is sort of amazing. So one of the things that you might be interested in knowing is where are most of her works today. Bennington Museum, Bennington, Vermont, has the majority of her work. There are still works that are in auction at Sotheby's, and you might be interested in knowing what the cost, what her paintings are drawing today. One of the paintings which was in the last part of the show, was sugaring, and that sold for $1.5 million. So the fact is that as Sotheby's, I mean, there are paintings that are small, and it depends on the size of the painting, but also depends on the condition of the painting. Because one of the ones I read about starts, it goes from 30,000 to 60,000, and it mentions the fact that there are some marks on it, like black paint that you had no idea where it came from. So when they look at the works, they look at what they came from, and some people wanted to know if, by some chance, if their painting, a painting that they have in their family might be a Grandma Moses. If you took a picture of your painting and sent it in online, they will authenticate if that is of anything to do with Grandma Moses. There are a lot of painters who are. I mean, there's so many titles for they're called naive paintings, they're called folk paintings, they're called primitive paintings, and most likely today we're referring to as outsider art. But the thing that amazes me when we started working on this, and I should tell you about the co-author of this. I'm the artist part of this. She was an artist too, but she was also an actress and a professor at Baldwin Wallace University, and she was a wonderful actress herself. And when we started this, we did this with the idea that we would take it around. But what really inspired me when I was giving my artist talk earlier in the year, you have such a wonderful mechanism to project the images that I knew that when you saw the images, you would be so entranced by them, because I don't think anybody could realize that, and those of us are all of age, I mean, how do we remember so much? And if we're talking about 1,600 paintings, that's a lot. And when we look at some of the paintings like the Country Fair, there are so many buildings and roads and things of that sort that, when I'm my own painting, I'm an abstract painter. But when I started looking at her work, I was just enthralled by the fact of her ingenuity and her ability to do these wonderful pieces, and not thinking of herself as an artist, because she was talking about that she thought her jams were much better than her paintings. Yes.
Through the years, before her paintings became, excuse me, I'm sorry. Through the years, as she painted how did she afford her supplies?
Well, that we were talking about that a little earlier. The thing was, is when she started painting, there was also things like she had Life magazine, and there were things that she saw, and I think her early paintings are her best paintings. Well, those things were brought to her, and the man who first looked at her work brought her materials, and she learned how to use the paints and that sort of things. But she later started to copy things from things that she saw in magazines that she put in, which were really not as wonderful as folk art.
But she still had to have supplies.
Yeah.
I'm not talking about what she painted.
Yeah.
What did she paint?
Well, I mean, with your imagination, the sky's the limit.
Yeah. Let me. I have the microphone, so I can make myself heard. What I learned mostly about Grandma Moses is how much more creative an artist she was than I had any idea. This was really amazing, partly due to the wealth of slides that you showed, which were wonderful. But more creative than that, or at least equally creative, was the way you put together the program. Mm-hmm. It was quite remarkable, the combination of the slides, piano music, the acting. It was really wonderful and quite creative in its own way. How did you arrive at that format?
Well, I mean, it's you know, when you think about the what an artist is able to do, and what one is in working from one painting to the next painting, you can see a certain amount of progress. I mean, like toward the end of her last paintings were more impressionistic. I think also because her sight wasn't as great at the end, so there wasn't, and she was not good. She was only good with little figures. She was in that one picture that she has where the figures are large. She should stay away from large figures. Figure drawing is the hardest thing to do, and they're charming when they fit into an environment, that kind of thing. And there are, and after I looked up, I wondered if there was any of her children or grandchildren became artists, and there's nothing that indicates that. There is a well-known artist whose name is Moses, but has nothing to do with her, at all.
So I am quite intrigued by one thing. I have not paid much attention to Grandma Moses, and I think I do pay attention to art. So here's this little lady, and she's painting these vast scenes. Where is she standing? Is it all coming out of her mind? She didn't climb a tree to the tippity top with her palette and her canvas. Yeah. Where is she? It's all these omniscient views, which I'm quite impressed with.
Yeah, I mean, there may have been some photographs that she looked at, but when you are painting, obviously that's the incredible thing about it. I think a lot of us remember during the 50s, the Christmas cards that came out. I mean, everybody was sending out Grandma Moses Christmas cards, and they were charming. And then she kind of disappeared. She sort of disappeared, and for in the 70s and 80s, there was no Grandma Moses. We had outsider art from various places, but all of a sudden, when we started looking at the work that she had done in this vast volume that is there, it was interesting because some of the things that are on auction at Sotheby's are pieces that were not in the books. So there are other things, and somebody had mentioned to me that in their family they do have a Grandma Moses, so they have a good background.
Shirley Taylor's brother.
Yeah, yeah. This is our friend back there with that.
How many of her paintings were? It seems that she relied a lot on memories. Mm-hmm. Yeah, like
I'm sorry, I'm not sure where the sound is coming from. Oh, yeah, okay. I must say, my hearing is also lousy.
Okay.
So
how many of her paintings were based on her own personal memories? You said she referred to Life
that's an
magazine.
interesting question. She, it's not unlikely that she would talk to her children, and they would even remind her of some of that. That's a very interesting question, because if she said I'm going to paint this picture of the county fair, and she may have had children who said, "Mom, do you remember that? And do you remember the fact that we had a Ferris wheel, and that they were dunking for donuts and things of that sort?" So sure. I mean, it's very possible that resources came from people she knew, and especially when she became famous, I'm sure there were people who went up to her and said, do you remember when we did this, and why don't you start doing some paintings about how to do candles and things of that nature. So sure, at 77, we all know what that is like. and you get as much, but as artists, and many of you are, when you sit down and start working, things happen. things happen that you're not even terribly sure you know what's happening. Such a private thing that happens between you and your imagination. And I'm sure there are things that we always say as artists, we all do a lot of bad work too. Even people who, I mean, even Da Vinci probably did some bad work. But, you know, and there are things that are lesser and things that are better all the way around. Yes?
Can I just say one thing? I found this painting that shows what you were saying about the large figures being kind of crude.
Yeah.
Yeah, just wanted to say that. And Charlotte, but Tom, were you going to say something? So, Charlotte's first.
Yeah. Did she ever make sketches, or did she start painting? Did anyone ever watch her paint? You know how
Well,
she worked.
You know, I think there is that film, the film that they did of her, and you know, I'm sure that there's something that looks like she's painting.
Yeah.
But you know, anytime there's a film about somebody painting, they set it up.
Yeah.
They set it up for them.
There aren't any preliminary sketches like there are for a lot of artwork.
Oh yeah, there are drawings.
Oh, okay.
There are drawings, but
Okay.
she wasn't really somebody who made a model. You know, I'm going to paint this picture, and I'm going to do all the drawing, and then I'm going to put it onto canvas. She just did it. She did it. I mean, there's a lot of artists who don't have any preliminary sketches. They just do it.
Did she do these all in one?
Oh no, I'm sure it took. You know, I mean, everything takes more time than that.
Okay, so Tom's going to speak. It's past 8:30. Oh. So, and I'll just ask Polly.
That's why. It's
Okay,
about
so anyway, it's 8:30. So we'll just have Tom's question, and then I'm going to ask Polly a question.
okay. My question is really about Polly and Grandma up here, Grandma Moses, and the monologue that she's saying. Is that something you wrote? How you draw? You know.
Well, you know, no, we wrote Barbara Winbigler and I wrote the things together. Barbara wrote some, I wrote some, and my contribution is mostly with the art and what people would want to see, and so it was, you know, things just happen, and we're dear friends, and we miss Barbara. She passed away a few years ago, but. You know, she read the book, she read the biography, and she came up with what she thought would say. You know, there is, I think it was also a film, which I haven't seen, by Cloris Leachman. Maybe it was a play. I think it was a play on Broadway of Grandma Moses. I don't think it was very successful, but there was, you know, a number of actresses have tried to, you know, become Grandma Moses, but I must say, we have our own Grandma Moses tonight. And absolutely no nerves. Thank you all for coming. I really appreciate
Okay,
it.
well, I do have. I hope that this will be okay. That I ask a question. So I just want to tell you, everybody, that Polly bought these glasses. She bought the shirt. She put the lace on it. Polly, I'm wondering, as an artist yourself, how did you use some of your art or some of your knowledge of an older artist for your communicating?
Well, you asked about how she painted, and she painted from her memories. I think so often these days people talk about you need to have a picture a reference picture or something to start a picture. And I think if you're painting from memory, you don't need references. They're here.
Yeah.
And so you paint what you remember, and as you paint, it changes because you can't fit so many people here, or you can't fit the barn there. So the picture is probably going to change as you paint it, somewhat at least. And I mean, who can say what it actually looked like, because by then it was a long time later. So I think she had plenty of license to do what she wanted to in her pictures.
I just want to say that our wonderful pianist, hidden behind the palm tree, ought to at least stand up. And my question, you don't, I'll hand you the mic. My question to you is where the music came from. Was it coming as you were watching the pictures? Where was it coming from?
Originally we did thank you. Originally we did the music as a sort of soundtrack along with the CD that had the paintings, and when we were originally working on it and doing many performances, timing was fine, so it could just play without that luxury of having lots of rehearsal time for the timing of things. We decided to use me as as sort of live underscore. The music are mostly songs from the late 19th and early 20th century. You probably recognized at least snatches of tunes all over the place, sort of loosely related to text or season or mood and all such things. And we sort of make it up as we go along and have a list of music. But it was put together to just sort of as a little underscore. So that's what we did.
So thank you, everyone. Wasn't this special?
Special.